and welcome back to Gaming the System, the podcast where three intersectional feminists examine gaming through a feminist lens. Today we are Alex, Jem, and Matt, and today we're going to talk about immersive experiences. And that's, I guess, any experience that happens in the real world but isn't technically real. I don't know how we could talk about, I guess, how we want to define it. Before we start, though, if you want to support us more in making more of this content that you are either listening to or watching, you can subscribe to our Patreon. There's a link in the top that corner, where we release a special Patreon-only episode once a month. So do check that out if you're interested. Okay, I guess to start, guys, my first question was, have you ever experienced an immersive experience yourselves, or do you have absolutely no idea what they are, why people like them, they're just not for you? I guess just your thoughts and feelings on those sorts of things. Jen, I'll start with you.
Yeah, no, I've attended a couple of these experiences. The one was sort of most recently was last weekend, I think, the weekend before. Anyway, not that long ago. And the other one was a few years. Well, it was about 2 years before pandemic times. So back in the before times.
Yes, the times we all can't really remember. Yeah.
So yeah, I've been to a couple, and yeah, lots of fun. Would recommend.
Yeah, I've done a sort of augmented reality type experience that was kind of like a detective game where you got to go around a location, kind of all based in the city where you are, and you kind of explore the city and find clues to solve a mystery. And it uses the locations around the city as like markers for clues and all that sort of stuff. I have been tempted by a lot of escape rooms and similar sorts of experiences like that as well, but never actually got around to sort of sorting out any. But I think they'd be really cool because I love like those types of puzzles where you have to sort of sit and figure things out. I was actually really tempted by a Tomb Raider experience. I think it was that was in London recently, and I was like, that would be amazing.
Oh wow!
But I had this sinking feeling that it probably wasn't going to be wheelchair accessible or wheelchair friendly, because the little trailer that it played showed people sliding down zip lines and things, and I was like, would love to, but probably not capable.
No.
So that was an interesting thought, but yeah, I loved watching those sorts of things sort of growing up as well. You know, the types of things like Crystal Maze. You know that, Matt. I was wondering if you might be too young to know about Crystal Maze, but and then what was the other one? That Jungle Run, I think I remember. I was on like CITV, and it involved catching like jade monkeys or something like that. For some reason, there was like this massive sense of jeopardy where the kids would get locked in and die if they didn't like get out of the temple or something. But yeah, those types of things always really enjoyed watching them when I was a child. How about you, Matt? Have you ever been to anything like that yourself?
It's lucky you brought up the Crystal Maze because that's literally the only thing I've ever done.
Oh wow! How
so
was that?
When that was like probably 15 years ago, and I remember Crystal Maze on TV was fabulous, and love that kind of thing. So I broadening the way I thought I could talk in this regard is like broadening it to things that make you feel immersed.
Yeah.
So from like younger, like going to the arcade, for example, and playing things there. And I played Time Crisis, and Time Crisis 2 is just the most awesome thing ever. And I played it so much that I could complete the campaign on 1 credit in 1 life.
Wow.
Yeah. But I was always they show the leaderboard of like the top 5 like scores, I think. And no matter how many times I did it on all places over the country, I was always only ever get to number 6. So past the leaderboard. But that is just, I would love when I've got millions of pounds to a room in my house that is just all of the big time crisis machine. You can just go there and just be properly immersed. Awesome.
That would be very cool, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you want to hear about my 2?
I would love to hear about that. Yeah.
So there's a ghost hunting night at a hotel in deepest, darkest Wales, and it was like really like down this little wooded lane, sort of it's set in its own like big acres and acres of land, and you couldn't see any other houses from there, and it had a big lake, and yeah, it was. And as we pulled up, I did actually think, yeah, this is how a horror film starts.
Yeah.
Like,
oh
4 friends go for this ghost hunting evening, and it all goes to scary. So yeah, there was a moment where I thought, oh, am I actually in a movie now? But actually, it was they were genuinely hunting ghosts, and so yeah, it was a completely immersive experience because it was being run by people who genuinely wanted to find something there.
Wow.
And I'm not sure how many of the people that attended were in that frame of mind. I think in our group, so there was actually 10 of us in our group, and there's usually in most of the groups there was 8, but we had some extra people, and at least 4 of the people in the group didn't seem very kind of engaged in what was going on. And I think it's one of those things, and I think this applies to all immersive experiences actually, that they're only as good as the people that you're with, because if you've got people sort of sitting there not getting involved, not engaging with the process, it breaks the immersion. That's the sort of it sort of takes you out of it, and it's difficult to, if you're a little bit shy, which believe it or not I can be scenario, then sort of calling out to the spirits is something that's quite difficult to do if you've got 4 people sat there stony faced not doing anything, or people just not kind of properly kind of getting into it. So I think we would have had a better time if we'd had people who were more kind of actively engaged in our group. But it was a lovely hotel, and the whole experience was really interesting and well worth doing. And we were up until 1 o'clock in the morning, so everyone was really tired.
I can imagine
by the end. So that was quite fun. But the other one that I did was Secret Cinema in London.
Yes.
Blade Runner. And if you want an immersive experience, Secret Cinema is amazing. And you before the event, and I know some friends who've done another one. I think they did the Back to the Future one. And if you know before the event, you get given a role to play, and then you dress up for that role, and they give you guidelines on what you need to wear and what you need to do. So play that role for the evening. So we were detectives for that evening, and it was great because we bought VIP tickets because we were like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it properly, and it really was sort of a once in a lifetime experience. And we got access to this bar, but we got all it was only detectives that were allowed in that bar. So I guess, and you had a different role, then you'd have somewhere else where you went. So they really kept you, and there was all these. Everyone there was so engaged with it. The set was amazing. It was raining the whole time when you were sort of in the outside place, just like the film. They had this big performance where they actually performed scenes. You watch the movie as part of the whole thing as well, with kind of going on at appropriate moments, and the seating was set up so that you could just order drinks and food while you were. The whole thing was amazing, and it was probably one of the most awesome experiences of my life, and I would love to do it again. It was quite scary to do, but it was very immersive, and you really felt like you were there. Really, really good.
Wow, that's definitely high praise. Yeah, it sounds amazing. Definitely. I was going to talk about secret cinema as well, because those are really popular now, aren't they? They're all over the place. Well, not, I mean, mainly London, but yeah, they definitely come into their own, I think. When you think, I don't really know. I was trying to think when I was thinking of questions for this topic. I guess I was thinking, well, how long have immersive experiences been around, really? I guess some of the earliest I can think of, I can't give you dates or anything, but the earliest examples I can think of are, where people have like murder mystery parties or like dinners, and I guess those kinds of detective roles, again, where you have to solve a mystery, are kind of your bread and butter in terms of an immersive experience, but they really kind of branched out, as you say, with the secret cinema into any kind of experience you could want, really. Yeah, and it's just interesting to think about how it's almost like if you are going to be part of that experience, you also have to play a role and play a game yourself, to kind of make it worth its while, I guess. Yeah.
It's interesting that you, Jem, bringing up saying you've got your group of 10 and a couple of them weren't really into it, and then that made you feel self-conscious and diminished something about your ability to immerse yourself. And it brings up the fact that immersing yourself in anything that is not real isn't a real life thing. It's a vulnerable place to put yourself in.
Yeah.
Because you're going, like, for the next, was it just one night at the mansion?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for this night, I'm going to immerse myself in this, well, if you believe in ghosts, exciting ghost hunting experience. And if you don't and you just want to go for the fun and go, oh, that was spooky, you can go there for that as well. And if you're with just a group of people that you can just be yourself, and a really good thing is to just have fun playing at something that isn't serious. Those are the kind of people to surround yourself with, because because you need to fully enjoy immersing yourself in something with other people, you need to feel completely safe that they're not going to judge you based on what goes on, because there is so much fun to be had in role playing stuff, and it's better to do something with a tiny group of people and absolutely be able to go all out than to be with a lot of people and have to hold back a bit. I had one more point, but I can't remember what it was, so I'll let you know when I remember.
That's all right. I can ask the next question if you like. I was going to ask you guys about whether you feel like these types of experiences that we've talked about are targeted at any particular audience, or appeal to a particular group of people more than others, perhaps.
I think there are certain personalities that would probably find these sorts of things quite challenging. I mean, there are people who are just like, no, I never dress up. I'll turn up to the fancy dress costume, and I don't do that. That's not me. There are people that don't feel comfortable role playing or even playing along. And I think that those people would probably really struggle with these kind of scenarios, although a lot of them, for example, Secret Cinema has actors who are playing all these parts, so you can just go and watch. You don't have to get involved. You'll have more fun, and it's more fun for the people around you when you do. I mean, we got stopped by this guy, and who was one of the sort of stall holders. Actually, he's one of the characters from the film. I can't remember which one.
Oh, wow.
And Daniel, who's a massive fan of the film, he just engaged in this whole conversation. No idea what they were talking about, because I don't know the film as well as he does, and I was kind of like, but I just like watched this out, and it was fun. It felt like, you got involved in it, and you just kind of like get dragged along with the other people, even if you're not the sort of person who would think that would work for them. But I think you made a really good point, Alex, earlier about the how welcoming are these events who might have things they need support.
Different access needs, or definitely. I think especially if someone is neurodivergent as well, it might be incredibly overwhelming in terms of sensory overload, and things like that. So that it is an interesting thing to consider about, like, I guess, who are these experiences really for, and can they still be immersive but have these accommodations and adaptations made to them to make them more inclusive, perhaps.
I don't actually see why they couldn't, because as you said, there's so many different ones nowadays. You've got everything. I mean, you were talking about like when they first started, and sort of murder mystery, and we know, there's murder mystery. You can go on the Cluedo weekends. But there's also, when I was studying theatre, there was a whole thing about theatre in the round, where the audience sat in the middle and the action happened all around them. And it was very much like about bringing the audience into the event. So you felt like you were part of it, and, stuff will get splashed on you. I mean, there's all sorts of things where there's different entry levels for these experiences that can appeal to lots of different needs and interests, I think. And Secret Cinema is the far end. I suppose I was thinking when you were talking about it that I went to I think Awake the Tiger in Bristol a few months ago, and that's a light show, but it's a walk through light show with a story. There's a big story going on in it, and there's some actors in that as well. So again, that's an immersive experience which you could take any group to, and they were all there, had an amazing time. And I think that was done because you went in small groups. It was never too busy, it was never too noisy, and there was always spaces you could go to get away from any of that. I think all of that would have been accessible to most people.
Do you have anything to add, Matt?
Well, I just was just thinking of who it's aimed for as white people.
I
thought that ghost hunting is a very white thing. I think that's always been my impression of it. and it's always been that white people, because white people have been making the majority of horror films, they always have to come up with these terrifying monsters and aliens and spooky things, because white people have always been the biggest monster. So I've always found that funny. And yeah, that was my only. It's interesting though, because talking about the kind of audience that can come to this kind of thing, because there'll be people who love it and will just fully immerse themselves regardless of how the people they're going with might be reacting to it. They're the people who are really into it but are shy and not able to engage fully because of what they might think of the people who either you're upset because they're not having a good experience, or that they're going to judge you for how you behave in this experience. And they might be like, not really bothered. And then there are the people who go, oh, I think it's stupid and I can't be bothered with any of it. And the point is that we are, every one of us is at some point in time one of the people in that spectrum. For example, if I went to a vegan festival with Jem's friend, who she said is a vegan and she really admires, I would bring that party. I would not go. I would not go because I would hate it, and me not enjoying it might impact someone else's enjoying it. So yeah, my point is that it's okay just to not do things, and it's okay to, because we're all that at some point.
Yeah.
But it's just that that having the self-awareness and just, it does take a lot, because we're brought up in such particularly in Britain, we're brought up to be so polite and so restrained and so proper, and I can't imagine how much that pressure is multiplied for women. And to go, I'm going to immerse myself in this fantasy. It's supposedly suspending the rules of society. But again, it comes with the vulnerability, as women there is so much risk associated with just being a woman, that it's no wonder that it's harder for women to fully immerse themselves in things. So, for example, I love Yu-Gi-Oh, as I've said, and there are a couple of Yu-Gi-Oh clubs around where I live, and I've been like bigging myself up to go to one, and because I love Yu-Gi-Oh so much and getting very comfortable with the things that I love, I know that I could go and just have a whale of a time regardless of who might be there, and so I don't worry overly about that. But then, looking on the Girl Gamer Reddit, someone posted how they had gone to a Yu-Gi-Oh club and had a horrible time because it's mostly men there. And when women go into a room, it's not like with men. I have an assumption that I could walk into any room and not have that room impact me if I don't want it to.
Yeah.
Whereas women going to these places, there's a whole different layer of risk that immersing yourself, that these sort of immersive experiences can be. That's just another place that has built-in risks for women. I was wondering if that's something that either of you have thought about and that has stopped you going on something like this.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily stopped me, but it's kind of been in the back of my mind, I guess, in a funny sort of way. Because, you know, not to be like a massive negative all the time, but it is in the back of your head that if something like, say, the one I described where the whole city was being essentially used as a game map to kind of find your way around, there's going to be an awful lot of distraction and like people being immersed in this thing that they're doing and not necessarily paying attention to what might be happening or things like that. So there is a risk of, you know, potential even crimes being committed, like I'm taking it down a dark path now, but yeah, that I suppose like where attention is centered on the experience itself, then it's almost like a, this is going to sound crude, but almost a bit like, you know, those hitman missions where you're hitman and you're dropped into this event that is happening and everyone is focused on the event, like the Formula One race or the big club scene or whatever else, and everyone has their own role within that and they're focused on that. So yeah, I guess in that way it does open up to all sorts of different risks, really. But yeah.
So I have to say, I've been playing Hitman like mad for the last month now, and I've played it for hundreds of hours in the past. And Agent 47 is who I aspire to be. that's the way, because he lives so deliberately and so precisely and so just, he knows what he cares about, he knows what he loves what he does, and he can just wander through any situation and just be completely chilled out, thinking, I'm here for my purposes. And I enjoy that. The thing that made you saying about like crimes and stuff made me think of an orgy as an immersive experience.
Yeah, technically.
That could be argued. And it comes down to the issue of consent.
Yeah.
If everyone consents to, and because consent isn't a binary thing, you don't sign a waiver when you go into an orgy and go, I consent to whatever happens. There needs to be like boundaries.
Yeah.
And the boundaries need to be clear.
I would hope there's an understanding of the event organisers that there's got to be like these safeguards in place and all sorts of stuff. So I'm sure they're definitely on top of that. But yeah,
I think that's actually I was thinking actually when you were talking, Alex, and it ties in with what you is that when I've attended these events, I felt less unsafe on a personal level than I have when I go to a tourist attraction or when I'm walking down like a really busy street in, you know, a big city or something like that. Because at these events, you are surrounded by staff who are there and their job is to make sure that everyone there has a good time. And so, yeah, I agree with the point you made, Alex, about, you know, not necessarily being focused on your surroundings when you're in these kind of environments. But you know that, well, you would hope that in that scenario, if something did happen, there's a whole bunch of people nearby whose job it is to help you. Whereas when you're, you know, at a tourist destination or you're just walking down the street, that isn't the case. So I think there is a sort of, but saying that, I've attended all of these with my partner, so I haven't gone to these events on my own. But do you see, that's because I tend to live my life on the assumption that everyone's an axe wielding murderer until they I do just live like that, but I'm not sure that that's a gender issue. I feel that that's I'm sure it's compounded by that, but I think that issue. Yeah.
You just made me think of the the phenomenon of when there are like big business conferences. A lot of women will go and wear a fake wedding ring if they're single, just to stop men from taking liberties.
Yeah.
And it's that the problem of if you go with your partner, whoever you're with at the time, there's another part of like the social barriers of this woman belongs to a man, and that gives you a layer of protection just from people going, oh yeah, she belongs to someone, and that is a form of safety. But the problem is the society that forces
Absolutely.
Exactly.
that to be the case.
Yeah. I was thinking also, because I think immersive experiences are, I suppose you could say they're in the same sort of genre as things like theatre, because obviously theatre can be quite immersive as well. And I wondered if there was even almost, because theatre can also be quite elitist in its own way. You've got the lower down, closer seats that you have to pay more money for. The higher up, further away seats you pay less money for. The riffraff sit at the back and the affluent people sit at the front, so to speak. But do you think there's an element of elitism to immersive events? Or obviously, I don't know, I mean, costs vary. I'm not sure. Some of them can be quite expensive, I guess, but I don't know whether there's a...
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, I think, there is. I mean, the Secret Cinema one is a really good example, because that we had to pay to get down to London, and we had to stay in a hotel, buy the tickets, which were really expensive, and there's a considerable expense for a weekend event. And be able to afford that and to spend our money on that. But the flip side is that it costs a huge amount to set a whole team of actors there that they're having to pay. They have a lot of construction that has to be done just to get the kit, you're talking movie standard sets here, it's extremely good, high quality. And so that doesn't mean that immersive events as a whole are elitist, because, as we said, I mean, you can buy or you can download off the internet a kit to do evening. You can get them for next to nothing, and actually all it costs is whatever you want to spend on the food and the costumes, and you don't even need to do that. You can just play the roles without doing that. So I think like escape rooms are massively popular, and from what I can see, they're appealing to a very broad range of people. So anything that costs money is going to exclude some people. I mean, at the end of the day, immersive experiences are entertainment and entertainment costs, but I don't think that they have the barriers that theatre has yet, or maybe never.
I have a lot more experience. Sorry. Sorry, I thought you'd said something. I have a lot more experience going to the theatre than I do immersive experiences. So I want to preface. I don't know where I'm going to go in the next couple of minutes, but I just want to stress, because my family have mentioned this to me recently. I can sound incredibly dismissive of things that people might care about, veganism, for example. And I want to stress that even though I'm being honest, and it just has absolutely nothing to do with me, and I might feel contempt for people for doing it, I don't want that to impact anyone's life in any way. I don't want anyone to think that I'm not saying I wouldn't do this if you paid me and so you shouldn't do it. That's so my dismissive tone is never targeting you, going, I want you to not do this. Okay. So I want everyone to bear that in mind. I hate musicals. I think they are just a complete racket for the people, the composers and the ones right at the top. They get hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds, while the stage by the people actually doing the work get paid nothing. So that's an element of theatre that I loathe. I also loathe musicals themselves. So it's awful in every way. And from what I understand, that is incredibly elitist, because they're the ones that have the absolutely insane prices. But when it comes to theatre, I've always loved a bit of Shakespeare, and that has a lot of really good ticketing options. So there is the Globe in London, and that's quite a reasonable thing to go on a tour around there, and there are tons and tons of plays there. It doesn't take itself very seriously. I also went up to Stratford upon Avon to see a play at the Globe there. That was brilliant. And when it comes to, I think theatre and live music are quite similar in that there's a real depth of talent that is worth going to see. It's not always it's not just there's the amazing epic ones and then the just bog standard ones. For example, I went to see a play called The Lady Killers with Peter Capaldi, and I watched that about 8 times, and there were tickets from about £70 to be right at the front to about £10 to be at the back. And I was so into that. And there are so many, and also I'm fortunate that I love a lot of heavy metal bands that are sort of like small to mid-sized venue bands. So they don't charge more than like £30 a ticket very often. So there's a lot of this stuff is very accessible, and the ones that are stupid price, they're just, I can't imagine it being worth the money for that kind of thing. But I do understand that things like escape rooms have rocketed up in popularity, and they're everywhere. And I wonder how much better an experience can be if you actually go to an escape room place, as opposed to playing something at home with some friends. And there's another element of that which I've got a picture of that I can show you a little bit later when it comes up. So foreshadowing.
Thank you, Matt. No, that's really interesting. Just for reference, in case anyone's interested, I love musicals.
Sorry, I forgot. See, for example, yes, I don't.
Yeah, each to their own, as they say. But yeah,